to talk about taxes, and I know it's incredibly dry, and I know it's boring, and no one cares until they're 55 with a share portfolio. But a new policy put forward by the government is worth actually understanding, I promise. Trust me, maybe. Basically, it's Treasurer Jim Chalmers' superannuation tax. God, that sounds so boring, but again, I promise it's worth understanding. At first, I thought, it's just a rich people's tax. It doesn't bother me and my infant-sized super fund. But then I looked into it, and stick with me, I'll keep it short. Here's what the government wants to do. Starting in July, if you have more than $3 million in your super fund, the amount above that will cop an extra 15% on the earnings of the assets. See, just like I said, it's a rich people's tax. Who has more than $3 million in their super anyway? And I thought rich people in Australia weren't supposed to pay tax. So the government says that the tax only affects 0.5% of super holders, and what they say is a modest adjustment. Australia's wealthy have not treated the news as modest. Here's multi-billionaire Jerry Harvey from Harvey Norman fame being very normal about things. So how would this work? I'm going to put it simply because to be honest, I'm just tired. Like, one key thing to know about this is that if your super is $3 million or less, it doesn't affect you at all. It only applies to the amount above $3 million. It would work like this. Let's say that you've got $5 million in your super, and by the end of the financial year, it grows to $6 million. Congrats, that's a $1 million gain. Now, because this tax only applies to the portion of your super above $3 million and your total is $6 million, means that $3 million of this is affected, or 50% of your balance. So, 50% of a $1 million gain gets taxed at 15%, which comes out to $75K. If, for example, your super was unchanged at $5 million, there'd be no extra tax paid. And if it went down, say, $4 million, then that $1 million loss would be offset against future earnings. You still with me? The thing that gets me about all these proposed reforms is that they aren't adjusted for inflation. So as prices and wages go up and up and up over time, people get caught by the rules, even if they're not actually better off. It just keeps sort of dragging more people in. The deputy chief economist at AMP reckons that without indexation, a 22-year-old earning average wages for the rest of their life will breach the $3 million by the time they retire. And I've sent a request to Jim Chalmers' media advisor for some explanation, and we'll stitch this vid when I hear back. There's a lot of angry mumbling around this, especially from the financial papers and Sky News, and you get the idea. It's media whose main audience may skew a bit older. Basically, people who most immediately have something to lose. This recent ANU study found that Australians over the age of 60 have enjoyed a post-tax income similar to that of mid-career working-age Australians and much higher than Australians aged 18 to 30. The ABC's Laura Tingle put it this way: older Australians are still picking up preferential tax breaks and income support from the government at a higher rate, despite the fact that in the past 20 years since the gravy train arrived, their superannuation balances have generally increased. So yeah, currently it's a tax for the rich, but the average punter could be concerned that if it's not adjusted for inflation, the middle class will become the next target. Not because they've become wealthy 20 years from now, just because they did what they were told. Now, of course, it's entirely possible that governments of the future may change the amount of money that you'd need to have in your super considered by this tax. That could definitely happen. Or, if you want to put your tinfoil hat on, this is all the tinfoil I had in my house, maybe that Jim Chalmers is just pushing ahead with no indexation because when this bill gets debated next, the other parties will scream and shout and tell him to change it. The Greens, for example, want the threshold to be $2 million instead of the $3 million. But instead of doing that, he could just compromise and get them to settle for something simple like, I don't know, indexation. Either way, right now, Australia's potential new super tax isn't as simple as you'd think.